afternoon, everyone. There's a little echo there. I'm Michelle Kinney. I'm here with Julie Roginsky and our very special guest, Ellie Leonard. This is the Dispatch on the Mayday Network, where we try to bring stories to you, sometimes every day when we can, about things you should care about or things you should know about. But before we get to that, I just want to let you know, I don't know if you guys knew this. Today is the 32nd anniversary on this June 17th of the OJ Bronco chase.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It was
The
it
whole
was
episode.
I know,
Right.
I know exactly what's happening.
Yep.
Yeah, I was my husband actually just called me, not about this, but he at the end of the call he's like, "Did you know?" It was this huge day in sports. There's actually a great 30 for 30 on ESPN about this. It was the NBA Finals Game 5, the Knicks and the Rockets at Madison Square Garden. The US Open was happening where Arnold Palmer was playing what turned out to be his final US Open round. The Stanley Cup parade was going on and the World Cup. And the Bronco chase broke into the NBA Finals, and like everybody freaked out. So, anyways, big day in history, in American history.
It was my friend John Pfeiffer and I were in grad school together in Boston, and we were driving up to Montreal because, like two rocket scientists, we said, "Oh my God, it's really hot here in Boston. Why don't we go to Montreal? It's going to be colder there." I don't know why. It wasn't really that much colder.
It's not that far.
But as we're crossing into Canada, and the radio switches from news in the United States to news in French, I say to him, "I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think OJ Simpson is on a highway in Los Angeles and he's being chased by the LAPD." And John Pfeiffer, who I've not seen in probably 32 years, said to me, "You're full of shit. You don't speak French." And I said, "I think I'm right."
No, you were definitely correct. And while I was, I guess, 12 at the time, I do remember it very well. Yeah. So
I was in my friend's hallway in a sleeping bag. I was spending the night at her house, and we were like outside her mother's room because that was the only TV in the house, and she was shouting out the door because she wouldn't let us in her bedroom. She was shouting what was happening, and we were just like taking notes in the hallway.
It's crazy.
Wow.
It's funny, like at any age, really. I mean, if you were conscious, it was just such a momentous moment. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about somebody else who went to jail by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. So there was an article with some, I guess, new revelations about the cause of his death, or did he take his life? Did he not take his life? And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So Julie, Ellie, I'll throw it to you.
Well, Ellie, I'm going to actually just let you talk, because you, more than anybody else I know, I mean, the New York Times prides itself on having done handwriting analysis, all of these other, they conclude the piece by basically saying that we have, of course, no forensic evidence to prove whether he committed suicide or was murdered. However, based on all of this other circumstantial evidence, and the circumstantial evidence, I guess, are these suicide notes that he tried to write, and testimony from Tiny, his jail. I'm making that name up, but like his jail, his one of his cellmates. I don't know what to make of this, Ellie, and I thought you'd be the person who would know what to make of this. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because the New York Times is writing about this now, and it is a very thorough piece where they obviously had more information than I had access to. But I wrote, I would call the Denny's menu version of what they wrote today prior to this, the lead up, all the different reports from the different guards, the talk about the final phone call, everything about Nicholas Tartaglione, which is sketchy to the max that he never reported this original suicide note. Nobody ever had it. I've done the handwriting analysis.
Sorry to interrupt. Is the cellmate?
Yes, former NYPD officer killed 4 people. One of them choked to death with a what are those things that they use for handcuffs? Those plastic.
Oh yeah.
Oh, like the zip ties.
Zip ties, yeah. Choke someone to death with a zip tie. Like,
Jesus,
huge guy. If you see pictures of him, like ridiculous. He just looks like a cartoon bad guy, right, from Looney Tunes. And so I did a handwriting analysis a few weeks ago where I reached out. I pulled all the things that I knew were actually Jeffrey Epstein's handwriting. I reached out to Mark Epstein because I always save that for if I don't really talk to the guy, but I'm like, I'm just going to try because sometimes he'll answer, sometimes he won't. And I was like, look, this is what I'm doing. do you have anything? And he did things that, I don't think they were public. Maybe they were public. I don't know. But I was able to compare everything and then just like do like multiple versions of every letter so that we could see what his handwriting really looked like. And so I had pulled this together a few weeks ago, but this was obviously a much more thorough analysis. As I was reading it, I had questions about like timing, like why are they writing this right now? I get a little bit skeptical about the intent behind writing it. Like there was just this really quick statement about Bill Gates in there that I thought timing was really weird, that they were like, oh, he was trying to blackmail Bill Gates. And then there was just like a tiny, just, impish little piece on Donald Trump that he clearly didn't have enough information. He was just, spiraling and writing little tidbits about him. And I just wondered what spurred them on to write this, because we've had this information forever, right? We've had most of this information for a very long time. I still, I will probably be the only person saying this, but I still believe that last phone call that Epstein had with Karina Shuliak, who was his girlfriend at the time, I still believe that they have a recording of that, because at the time, the officer who gave him the phone, it wasn't a cell phone, it was a jail phone, had to log him in because he didn't have his own like prison ID number or whatever. So somebody had to log him into that phone. And when you're logged into the jail phones, they keep a record of it. There's always a record of it somehow. So I still believe that phone call exists and is available to us. But it is really interesting that there was all these like written documents that we've never seen before. And why have we never seen them before? They exist somewhere. So the piece was, it was clearly to dispel any rumors of conspiracy, by going pretty hard into the idea that he killed himself, which, I tend to lean into, but there is just so much in this story. There is so much about the things that went wrong at the jail, like that, if it's not a conspiracy, it was complete mismanagement of like letting a guy who is a well-known prisoner who has been on suicide watch, who people reported as being on suicide watch, who other prisoners have said, he's a threat to kill himself even if he wasn't on suicide watch. But they weren't watching him. They were sleeping. They put him in a cell by himself. He had all these different sheets that he was, talking to Lev Parnas. He's like, prisoners don't get a bunch of sheets. We get one sheet. Like he had a stack of sheets in his cell. He had all these things that could be used to do this, and just nobody paying attention to that. And he's just such a high profile guy. And so it kind of laid it all out. It was a very long article. But again, I go back to like, why now? Like, what's the intent? We've been yelling about this stuff for a year and a half now. Like, why are you all of a sudden going like, oh, here's all the details and now we're totally on your side and we want to talk about it? I found the timing a little odd.
Well, a couple of things. Before we get to the timing, and I have some theories about Pinch Sulzberger and his name popping up in the New York Times. For people who don't know, Pinch Sulzberger, Arthur Sulzberger, was the publisher of the New York Times. He's the father of the current publisher, A.G. Sulzberger. But before we get to that, I read that story, and I don't know what you thought, Michelle and Ellie, but my impression was, if he did kill himself, they made it awfully easy for him to do that.
That's what I got from it.
They saw a guy who was a clear suicide risk because he had attempted suicide several times earlier, apparently, according to the story. And they gave him, not literally the loaded gun, but the bed sheet to do it. In fact, so many bed sheets that they can't figure out which noose he used, apparently, to do it with.
Right. They threw it away. They threw it away.
Like the whole thing is, it's almost like, what was that Nicole Kidman movie from a long time ago?
Malice?
No. Where she's the teacher and she's having an affair with her student and she's married.
Missed that one.
Well, the point is that basically she's a teacher who wants her husband dead. So she has this affair with a student. No, she's a weather reporter. Sorry.
Oh, that's very
no. But it was based on a story about it was based on a story of a New Hampshire teacher. Sorry.
Yeah.
But she is this weather reporter who persuades her teenage lover basically to kill her husband without actually saying that she was going to do it, but she kind of manipulated him into doing it. This is a very long and convoluted way for people who've never seen this movie. This analogy makes no sense. but the point is, like, it's almost like, okay, well, if this guy's suicidal, we're gonna help him finish the job because we want him on.
Well,
Right.
somebody that worked at the jail also, I just remember reading that they had noticed when he came in that he looked really forlorn and looked really depressed, and
Mhm.
before they even knew who he was, asked, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And like the whole thing, because he wasn't even there that long, right? Like how
Yeah.
many days
Like
was
a
he
month.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah, a month. And like the other thing that just keeps getting me is the tape. Like,
Um,
I'm sorry, it's just so convenient that Pam Bondi's like, "Well, you know, the camera resets itself every night at X time,"
right.
or whatever it was.
Which
Yet
is
there's
different than that they're saying. They gave a completely different excuse
right,
in this article. Right.
right, and there's, like, the little orange thing you can see kind of on the side of the frame.
Mhm.
Um, Again, to your point, if it's suicide and it happens how it did,
Right.
why all of this messiness? Why all this
Right.
mismanagement? It just seems like how many coincidences can there be? And I'm not saying
Mhm.
all of it's wrong. I'm not saying none of it's wrong. It's just it seems like something ain't right here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's right. I would say that is the better framed conspiracy is who allowed this to happen, not
Yeah.
versus like somebody going in a cell because they did kind of line it up how hard it would be for somebody to actually get in a cell. There's like 3 sets of keys. You have to get it from the guards. The guards were sleeping. Um, that would be tough. But who made it easier for him to kill himself if that was the case? Because even Efren Reyes was his last roommate, and he, as far as I can tell, and in this article even more so, he was the one who was willing to talk to anybody. Like he was like a state's witness, which is why he got moved the day before Epstein died. Is he was talking to the government or whatever in order to solve another case, right? To help his own case, but he was very chatty, and he was also pretty empathetic. And so you had this guy going like, "Please don't kill yourself. Like, I gotta go, but like, I don't want you to do anything bad. Like, I'm noticing they
Mhm.
had I think it was him who said they had created this like clothesline in their cell between the two of them, and then he noticed, and it was just to hang up their clothes, but he noticed that Epstein was giving off kind of suicide signals, and so he threw this clothesline away. He flushed it down the toilet because he was like, I don't want to have this clothesline in my cell. This guy is clearly depressed. And so he talked a lot about it, and he expressed concern to the guards that Epstein was a risk. And yet, when he, attempted the first time, they pulled him off suicide watch 24 hours later. Like they just said they were like, oh, he said he's not suicidal and that he likes life, and they were just like, let's pull him off and just put him on psych watch. Um, I just don't think, especially with a high profile billionaire, prisoner, I just don't think that that would be likely. I would assume that they would go the extra mile, keep somebody on watch a little bit longer, put them in places where they have, better records, and then just the idea that the guards watching them are on 16-hour shifts, sometimes 20-hour shifts. This woman says she's falling asleep in her car on the way home, or like goes on vacation in order to sleep. Those It's all very concerning, and speaks to like the mismanagement of the system in general. It could be that he killed himself. I mean, that's obviously one of the likely scenarios. But just the hiding of information, the idea that we have not had access to any of this, that it has been Pam Bondi telling us that the stuff is, the videos are resetting when it's them going, no, we're just uploading our new hard drive. We had a new system. It's set, that
Right.
day happened to be the day they said they were uploading this new hard drive. And so all the cameras were off, which is weird. But why are we getting two different stories? Like, it's just
Right.
the information is so muddled and so deceptive, I think, on the side of the DOJ especially,
Yeah.
that there's no wonder that we're all going like, well, then we don't think what happened.
Well, I think especially, I mean, to your point about like the timing of this reporting, and I'm thinking about the other story that came out just a number of days ago about the Situation Room and
Yeah.
how freaked out the White House was, and they were like, in the Situation Room talking about this as like the biggest problem they were facing, not war, not
Right.
anything else, but Jeffrey Epstein. And Todd Blanche, kind of being at the center of this, knowing so much more about Donald Trump and his problems than anybody else. And the way that Todd Blanche has kind of covered this up with the DOJ and Pam Bondi, and we're living in this sort of post-truth. I don't even want to say America. It's like world. And you look at these people who have proven to be so untrustworthy, and so blatant in their lies, and they look right into the camera and lie to the American people over and over and over again. It's like, how do you take the information that they're giving us and believe it? Like, and maybe that's part of the point, right? I mean, that they're trying to create this environment where nobody believes anything anymore. But you have to wonder, like, why? You like it's I didn't come away from reading this article, this one in particular, feeling any better or any more certain about anything. Yeah. Right. Like, cool.
Like like, as to your point, Julie, like with the Sulzbergers, I mean, they're very embedded in the Epstein story. When Epstein was being fired from the Dalton School, they were one of the people who tried to hire him to come work for them, was the New York Times and Punch Sulzberger. So there's Punch, there's Pinch, there's AG, right? 3 generations of Sulzbergers who've run the New York Times. And in the 70s, Punch, I believe, was trying to hire Epstein to come work at the New York Times. And so, you know, you never really know what the intent behind the information from something like this is. Is it just because they're just trying to shut something down, shut a story down and be like, here it is, now everybody can go home and be quiet? I don't think that works anymore, probably, for the American people. I think it just sort of spurns us on to go like, well, we're going to push back here, here, here. But yeah, the timing is just super weird, because it's like, why is everybody writing about this now? I mean, we've had this.
I'm loath to invoke, but you kind of opened the door because you talked to him. I'm loath to invoke Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, who in his own way is a very problematic figure in this whole story. However, I'm trying to figure out if anybody was closer or knew his brother's mindset more at that point. And maybe that's not true, but he was still very close to his brother when his brother was incarcerated, right? He spoke to his brother all the time.
I mean, yeah, they weren't close as brothers, right? Like, he was not, they didn't have a very good relationship, but they were still family. So they were kind of one of those, like, we have to be family, but we don't hang out. Like, you'll never see Mark Epstein on the island. He didn't get a lot of invites to go do things with Jeffrey.
Were they in touch? Were they in touch when Epstein was in prison at that point?
I believe so. I believe there was, yes, because all of his friends had disappeared, right? So it was his lawyers and it was Mark Epstein, and then everybody else had just like abandoned him.
So what's interesting to me is you would think that his brother would know if Jeffrey Epstein was suicidal. And I find it, I don't know what his motivation would be to say that his brother didn't kill himself. I don't know if he's trying to set somebody up or what he's playing for, or whether he truly believes his brother is not suicidal. But it's interesting to me that somebody who was in touch with his brother during this period of time in question said that, no, my brother was not suicidal and there's no way he could have killed himself. Like, what do you make of that?
I mean, I try to be of two minds, because I think family probably regularly says that about their own family. When someone ends their own life, you know, they always go, oh, you know, they weren't suicidal. I don't know where this came from.
Right.
But, you know, Mark Epstein was very desperate to be in Jeffrey Epstein's life. So he knew a lot about him, even if they weren't like emotionally very connected. But he also very, you know, pointedly said that Donald Trump had something to do with Jeffrey Epstein's death, right? That's a very significant statement. And so you have to wonder, what is that from? Like, what gives you that information? Is that something from a phone call that he had with his brother? Do you know, because it did show that he was trying to write things down about Trump in the end. Trump was, you know, now 3 years into office, or 2 years into office. So yeah, and he's tough because he's absolutely closed-lipped about 99% of everything. Mark Epstein won't talk about anything, but the prison stuff, he will. That is like the one thing he'll talk about. And so, you know, that is something he's been very adamant about, is that Epstein didn't kill himself. You know, and there are pieces of this where you go, well, okay, what makes that true then? Like he still only had 2 indictments against him. While he only had 2 indictments the first time, he thought he was going to get bonded out. That was a piece where they said he totally switched his mindset when he didn't get bonded out. That's when he became like very depressed. But there was this idea that he had these lawyers and people who could get him out of this the same way he had gotten out of the first time. But he was also much older. If you talk to Julie K. Brown, he was very frail when he would come to court. I don't know. And they talk about being in these cells and like how long you can spend time in them before your mind starts to play tricks on you, and all this different stuff. So I don't know. We need that last phone call, and I just keep pushing for that. I know it exists, but that would say so much about.
You said anything, Ellie? Has anybody asked?
There is a potential Karina Shuliak following me on Instagram. I have not asked her yet. I don't think it's the real her. But I don't think anybody's talking to her. When you talk to somebody like a Sarah Kellen, all these women are like, no one's ever spoken to us. Like, law enforcement has never reached out to us. So my guess is nobody is talking to her unless it's just her lawyers.
You also mentioned the Trump thing, and I think it's fascinating because there's this little throwaway line in the Times. And again, there are all these little throwaway lines here that I have to say they merit like not just one story, but 100 stories each. Yep. But the one that jumped out at me, and I don't know if it jumped out at both of you, is that I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it in front of me, is something along the lines of he was trying to find something on Trump but there was nothing to find. Like, talk about exonerating Donald Trump in this story. Here we all are saying, show us all the Epstein files. Donald Trump is saying, don't show all the Epstein files. We all know, based on, in our case, Michelle's and my case of being from the New York media market, and just for being alive for the last 40 years, that Donald Trump does not care about it protecting anybody but himself. So clearly, the reason we haven't seen all of the Epstein files is not because he's trying to protect anybody but himself. Like, he doesn't care who else is the Epstein files. And yet here's the New York Times. This is why the whole story to me it's shady, because here's the New York Times. It was oh, by the way, he was trying to come up with something like Donald Trump, but there was nothing there was no evidence. Like, what? Right.
It was the same as the Ghislaine Maxwell proffer. It was like, let's talk about Donald Trump in 2 days of interviews. Oh, it's one sentence. Okay, bye. Like, it's this idea. We did it.
This is the
we checked the box. Right. I know. Like, I totally caught that too. I was like, really? That's it? We get one sentence? Like, really? There is a lot of information that Jeffrey Epstein has given on Donald Trump in all of his emails, like, that had to do with how he was, when he bought that Palm Beach residence that they both fought over. He was working with like the electrical union mob in order to like cover up his taxes. Like, there's tons of information on Donald Trump, but you're not going to hear about it from the New York Times, because if you hear about it from the New York Times, that's not going to get published, right? That story will not get published if they go any harder into that. And so it's like, they're going to say, oh, he was making these little chicken scratch, notes. And then they had a second thing. I don't know if you saw it, but if you clicked on the bottom, you could actually see all the things he was writing, all the letters he was writing in jail. And it was just like, Donald Trump's a bad guy. I don't like him. It was just so pissy. And it just like he had so much information that he had on Donald Trump in his emails that he was talking about all his friends with, and like everything. And he was, I still believe he was the number one source on Donald Trump for past things, for like Michael Wolff's writing and the things that he was talking about. Like, that was a source of that Donald Trump information. So the idea that he was just like, oh, he was a bad guy and he didn't really have money, like that was it, and then that's all we're going to talk about in the end days of Donald Trump, or of Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think that's true. And I think that was just kind of like, check the box. Let's not talk about this. Here's your story. Go home. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then they kind of do the 6 takeaways from, I don't know if you saw that story today, 6 takeaways from the Times investigation. And again, I keep saying, well, we don't really know whether he killed himself or he was murdered based on forensic evidence. And no postmortem has ever been able to prove that. However, this is what we think based on circumstantial evidence. And circumstantial evidence is, as I said, the jailhouse cellmate who, okay, forgive me if I'm a little skeptical of guys who have an incentive to basically tell the authorities what you want to hear.
Right.
And a whole bunch of, maybe the lawyer said that he was suicidal. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that is unanswered. And actually, and to me, many more questions that are at, like, the fact that they're like, oh yeah, by the way, he had nothing at Donald Trump. And Trump, if that was true, would not have sent Todd Blanche to interview Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, then they would have gone, and this is what I want to talk about. Then they would have had Tucker Carlson or whoever JD Vance is, sit down with her in broad daylight and say, tell us what you know. If there was really nothing to hide, right? But of course, there is something to hide, which is why she's cooling her heels in Club Fed now, as opposed to where she was before. Go ahead.
Add to that. I will add to that. And I just published a piece on like the multitude of ways that Todd Blanche has violated the Epstein Transparency Act. But one of the biggest ones is if you start to dig into the Epstein files, there are no emails prior to 2008. Like, they just don't exist, right? They're not in there. Like, there's a couple, there's like a rando, like 2005, whatever. I looked into the details of like what are the stats on Americans emailing by 2008, and it's like 81% of people are using it as their main form of communication. There are no emails prior to him going to jail the first time. They don't exist in the files. So what's happening during that period of time, from like when we all started using AOL in like 97 to like through that period, that is his best friendship with Donald Trump. Like, that is when they had the most communication. That's when they had all the scheduling. That's when they had all the flights to the island. That's when they had everything. Everything is in that period of time, and it doesn't exist in the files. And I firmly, firmly believe that that has to do with Donald Trump. There's no other reason for that.
Well, he doesn't email, but you're suggesting even emails about
scheduling, scheduling, flights, lunches.
I mean, the other thing that I thought was really weird about this, and let me know if this jumped out at either of you, is that, and let me preface, my husband is a defense attorney, so he's been at the MCC before it was shut down, and he said it is in fact the worst place on earth. Like, I asked him what was worse, Rikers, which is notoriously awful. Also, if you're not from New York and you watch Law and Order, Rikers is where they usually put people. That's really bad. Apparently, according to him, the MCC is worse. So I'm gonna posit here that if you spend a month at the MCC, you might lose your mind. Like, especially if you've gone from flying around on private planes and hanging out in Paris and your private island to suddenly now hanging out in the worst place on earth. Like, I understand why this is the yawning future before you, that you might say, you know what, I'm 60 years old. I've had a nice run. Like, I'm not sticking around to live this way the rest of my life. So granted, I will acknowledge that is a very distinct possibility based on what I've heard about the MCC. However, this is now 2018, 19, right? He is 18 months away from Donald Trump potentially no longer being president. And he's got cards to play with the Justice Department of whoever would defeat Donald Trump. And this, we know, was Joe Biden, but he didn't know that at the time. He's also got cards to play in the form of Steve Bannon, in the form of a bunch of other guys who are close to Trump, who he could have called upon. And giving up within a month on that, even if he had nothing else on Trump, this is a deeply connected guy. I mean, this is a deeply connected guy who clearly was blackmailing, according to Bill Gates, which means that he was blackmailing everybody else on earth too, which means that he had enough on all these people to say, hey, unless you want me to write the tell-all of all tell-alls here in jail, you're going to get me out of here from Trump. Like, you're going to figure out a way to get me out of here. And he'd already gotten out of this once before.
And
no sense. Like, he'd already gotten out of it once before.
And I get that some people would have abandoned him by this point, but like, I don't think Steve Bannon would have, because Steve Bannon was emailing him to the moment he got arrested. Like, they were very, very tight. It's a very eerie conversation. But then also, it's something that I thought they just tossed in there that I thought was really interesting, is he was talking about Leslie Wexner abandoning him, and Leslie Wexner swears that they stopped being friends prior to the first court case, which I found that to be very interesting, because that totally contradicts his entire deposition. So I thought that was something to circle back. But I also found that the Bill Gates, just that little one blackmail comment about Bill Gates, I found the timing of that particularly interesting, because he was just deposed It felt like somebody slipped that in for the benefit of Bill Gates. It felt like there was a few of those, like we're going to slip in some little things to help people out. But yeah, I just feel like this is not all on the up and up. I mean, their research could be good. I mean, it could be, but I don't think that was the point of the article. I think the point of the article was to shut things down, and to kind of like tie up some loose ends. That's what it felt.
Yeah. I noticed too that, and obviously this is a significant thing that she said, so it should be included, but I just always notice the quote from Virginia Giuffre about how she didn't see Trump do anything wrong is always sort of like near the front of these articles, like to kind of set the tone for the rest of it. And, obviously not everybody was everywhere to see everything. So that makes sense. But it just always seems like a very convenient piece of information that is placed very particularly in these sorts of articles,
In all the depositions, Sarah Cohen,
Right.
said, do you know him? She goes, nope, just for 15, or she goes, I just met him for 5 minutes. And then she says 3 more times in the deposition, I only saw him for 5 more minutes. And I was just like, we didn't actually ask, but thank you. Like, thank you for keep saying that.
Yeah.
Right. Like it just feels like it feels like, in the old, okay, I'm going to now do my weird reference. In the old Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you had like, but not Squidward. What was his name? Slugworth or whatever. And he would like whisper into people's ears before they went into the chocolate factory. And he would always like whisper into them, and because he was a spy. Like it just feels like there's a person in this case who, when they find out somebody's about to be deposed, they're whispering in their ear and they're like, okay, now go. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know who that is. I assume who's in charge of that, but like it just feels like everybody goes in there and there's a 1 sentence takeaway on Donald Trump. And it's like, if he really is innocent, if he we would have all the files if he was innocent, first off. But the statements about him that are exonerating him would be detailed. They would be long. And they're not. They're very clipped, and then you're done, right? We move on. And that is consistently through every deposition is he gets like a 1-2 sentence and then he's out.
Yeah.
That's what I think makes this so fascinating. Like somebody should do an investigation of this New York Times story. And maybe it's 100% above board.
Yeah.
But I also know how the Times, I mean, I've dealt with them enough to know how the Times operates. It's still the world's indispensable newspaper, but when they want to go after somebody or protect somebody, believe me. I mean, I can tell you a story in 2020 when I first launched my nonprofit and we were going after NDAs for all the presidential candidates, and we got Elizabeth Warren to ask Michael Bloomberg that question about whether he used NDAs in his private business, which got him to drop out eventually.
Wow.
Yeah, at the debate.
I didn't know that, Julie.
Oh yeah, that was
learning new things every day.
Yeah, there you go. The Times was apoplectic because they have come from on high that Michael Bloomberg was their guy, and they called me and said, well, do you know other candidates who use NDAs? And I said, I know some who do and some who don't, and I can tell you who signed our pledge not to use NDAs going forward and who didn't. And they were like, well, let me tell you this, it's this person and this person, and this person. So it's not just Michael Bloomberg. And I was like, are you Michael Bloomberg's lobbyist?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Is Michael Bloomberg in the room with us right now? Like you sound crazy.
It was very odd. It wasn't odd, but it was understandable. There, the Salzburgers, Bloomberg, there's a whole cabal. And so, and look, and then of course you look and see that Pinch Sulzberger was not Punch, but Pinch Sulzberger. So there's, as you said, there are 3. There's the storied, Punch Sulzberger, and then his son Arthur, who's known as Pinched, and then Pinch, and then
what is it with rich people naming having weird nicknames? It's a thing.
Pinch does not like being called Pinch. That's
okay. Because I was like, it's a very
no
rich people thing to have weird
nicknames. No. It was like you're just a little pinch compared to your father Punch.
Yeah.
So,
rough. Yeah. That's rough.
It's rough.
Yeah.
But there is a whole, there's a whole orbit here, and I gotta say, this story, and I'm not I'm fully open to the fact that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. Like, I don't have a horse in this race. It is entirely plausible to me that he committed suicide, but there are things in this story, these little breadcrumbs that they drop,
right,
that to me, I'm like, none of this makes sense, especially the part about, of course, he tried to come up with something on Trump, but there was nothing to come up on Trump.
Well, also, when you look at the people who are in power, when you're looking at the people in power who stand to benefit from it, in this moment, and in the moment that happened, and all the moments in between. I mean, even just like Nutlick, who lived next door, had a relationship with him he's been lying about. It just seems
Mhm.
as though like everyone lies and then backtracks and lies and backtracks, and then you have all this other cabal. And this is actually not, we don't have to get into this, but Ellie, I was going to ask you if you saw the reporting from Wired.com yesterday
Mhm.
about the secret society. So
Yeah.
if anybody doesn't know about this, there was reporting in Wired.com that there was a hack into this secret society that Peter Thiel invented in 2006. And they have retreats and they do all kinds of weird stuff within the other things, like how to make cults and all kinds of other, anyways, whatever. These people, a lot of these people are freaky. But I saw the list of all the people that was on this particular, attendee list or membership
Mhm.
list that's most recent. There were Democrats, there were Republicans, there's, people who work for the Atlantic. I mean, like crazy. And if you think about
Right.
this quote unquote cabal, right, that, kind of runs everything and everybody knows each other, protecting each other, I thought a lot about that, a lot of the overlap. And I saw there in the Epstein files,
Mhm.
justice.gov, there is an email from November 28th, 2012 from Lisa Randall forwarding
Mhm.
the invite to Jeffrey Epstein, invite to dialogue.
Yeah.
Dear Fawad, is that what they called him? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've
Um,
got them too.
yeah, dear Lisa, you were invited to join us at Dialogue 2014, a 2-day bipartisan retreat, blah, 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 blah. Peter
Mhm.
Thiel, all the other stuff, right? The date,
Yeah.
Salt Lake City. And again, like it's, of course, there's an Epstein connection. Like, of course
Yeah.
there is with all these most powerful people. So, like, I'm just wondering when you saw this report come in, and then you saw the list,
Mhm.
and you're, I'm sure, noticing a lot of familiar names. Like, what were you thinking, or what are you thinking?
I'm still waiting to get a bigger picture about what this is, because I feel like it's a type of gathering that there are multiple of. Like you have like the
Totally.
Renaissance weekend, which is very similar. We have these meetings where I came from Montana, and they have these meetings in like the Yellowstone Club every year with all the tech bros that are very
Mhm.
secretive and locked down, where they do really weird stuff. And so I don't trust Peter Thiel as far as I can throw him, but apparently, according to the emails, he didn't even actually go to these, and so like they were just like, "Why is he still holding them? He's not even here." Um, I want to know more about it, because I don't. My assumption is it's a rich guy club, where people went, and they went to like learn about tech and AI, because it's like the forefront of AI, which I do think Epstein mentioned, but he was not invited. He is courting, as
Mm,
far as I can dig in the files, he was never received the invite. He was contacted about it from Ian Osborne, who is the publicist hired by Michael Wolff, who
wow.
for Epstein, because he was going to go, and he was just like, I don't even know why Peter Thiel's name is still on here. He never shows up to these things. But it just, to me, so far just sounds like a rich bro club, like any number of ones that happen in the US every year that all these just assholes go to every year.
Right, and they
And so
all
I
have
want to know,
these, yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
was
I
just
just want
gonna
to know more about it first, because to me, it doesn't feel that secretive. Like it just feels like it was like a thing that invited a bunch of people every year. So I don't know how secretive and like cabal-y it was. But it is very like buzzword right now, right? Everybody's like, oh, there's a secret list and everything. But before I dive into it, I want to know more about what it is, because I feel like there's several of these in the US, and they're where rich people go to make decisions for rich people, right? That don't affect, that kind of ruin the lives of everybody. It's probably about data centers now. That's what they're talking about.
yeah, and
Um,
terrorism against data
yeah,
centers and
yeah.
World War III and all
But
these,
it's
like,
also
Right.
how to start a cult. Like it's
yeah,
weird.
There's weird stuff. Yeah,
and
I'm sure
matchmaking.
it's
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not great. I just feel like, since it just popped out, I kind of like wanted to like ruminate a little bit and like figure out
Yeah.
more what it was. Maybe we can find some of the like information about like agendas that happened at these meetings. Because there are people on there where you're like, huh, I wonder why that person would go to something that feels this
Right.
weird. Like they seem to
Right.
be a relatively decent person. So my first goal is to go through and figure out from this list who's actually in the Epstein files, and see if I can like cross navigate those. But I do want to know more about it. Like, I hope more comes out about it that's informative and we can kind of dive deeper.
Yeah.
Um,
We were, I mean, on that note, like of just kind of like, like the first thing that popped out to me, and this has nothing to do with Epstein or anything like that, but Jim Himes, a Democrat from Connecticut, was one of the only Democrats who came out swinging in favor of their surveillance contract Frontier had
Mhm.
with the federal government. And like, then you see his name on this list and you're like,
Yeah,
what? So,
right.
you know what I mean? Like, that's why I mean, again, to your point, like we don't know the whole picture yet, and hopefully we'll know that, or at least know
Right.
some
I'm
more
sure it has something to do
soon.
with all that.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
it does, but
exactly.
yeah, I just wanna dive
Yeah.
deeper.
the other thing that we wanted to ask you, Ellie, and I know we don't have much time, I don't want to keep you too long, is the New York Times also did a story. You and I talked about this offline before we started. New York Times also did a story about the White House Situation Room meetings
Right.
about the Epstein files and how to cover them up. And if you want to know why I think it's completely implausible that Epstein had nothing on Donald Trump, you'll need to look at the fact that in 2025, the entire senior leadership team of the Justice Department and the White House and the Vice President all decided to convene a series of meetings in the Situation Room, the most
Mhm.
secure skip on earth, in order to find out what was going on. So my question is, sorry, my nose is running. My question is, what do you make of the Times reporting that now, as opposed to when they obviously got the recording of this, which
Yes.
probably in real time?
Which and this is also going into a book, yes? Am I right about that? Or
Oh
Per
yeah,
per
I mean, this
usual
yeah,
with these
per
folks.
usual. Okay.
is
Okay.
Jonathan
My
Swans and Maggie.
concern,
Yeah.
yes, my concern is when they had this meeting and one of the main things that they talked about in this meeting was sitting down with Ghislaine Maxwell, who was at that time in a low security prison in Florida. And they wanted her to make a statement about Donald Trump. And at first they were saying, oh, she can interview with Tucker Carlson. I don't know if Tucker Carlson would have ever interviewed her. I know people are kind of on the fence about actually involving themselves with Ghislaine Maxwell. But
Yeah.
ultimately, they decided that Todd Blanche was going to meet with her for a proffer, which means that he was going to have her speak, which ultimately gives her something kind of like a plea deal or some sort of protection, right? So she can upgrade, which ultimately she did. And so that meeting with her happened 1 week after this meeting in the Situation Room. And then I believe she was moved up to a minimum security prison camp in Bryan, Texas, a week after that. So it was like very boom, boom, boom. Again, in this meeting where she had Todd Blanche meet with her, it was like a 1 or 2 sentence question about Donald Trump. And it was like, he was very nice. I never had any problems with him. I think he's a great guy. Moving. And then it was just like shut down, didn't talk about it. My question is for like the New York Times and Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan and writing a book and all this is, I know that it takes a while to publish a book. And this has been less than a year since this meeting and their book is coming out. My question is when they had this information, because if they had the information that went on in that meeting prior to her being moved up to Bryan, that's vital, right? If they knew about that before it happened, that is very, very important. And again, like anybody in this process who has information but is waiting for a book deal or some way to like cash in, to your point, you said, journalism means you report on it.
Yeah.
Non-journalism means you wait for a book deal to write about it.
Hmm.
You are hurting. You are part of the people who are hurting the survivors in this process who are going on now 40 years waiting for justice. So if they had information back then that could have benefited these survivors, which that meeting in that, that would have been really important to know back then, they should have said something right away. And
And the
then
survivors
again,
a
then
big
again, write your book and as
yeah.
a follow-up to the thing that you knew, but like tell that information right away and give it to the justice or give it to like the House Oversight or somebody.
Yeah.
And that's where I just, I don't have any relationship with any of these people. So and I've always to her as Maggie. This is kind of what she does. And, all of her thing is transactional and about access because she wants access. So she gives just enough to that world, to Jared Kushner, to Donald Trump, in order to get
Mhm.
access to write the stories. And it's like this vicious cycle. Now, Jonathan Swan, I've always thought was fantastic. And I will never forget that interview he did the end of Trump's first
Right.
term. Fantastic. But like this, I think about Woodward and the quote about COVID and how like Trump knew early on that he was like, oh, it's not from the touch, it's from the breathing, or whatever it was that he said. And I have to wonder if these people, and obviously they don't because they're doing it, looking around at the country that has created success for them and they've been able to flourish. They see their country crumbling because
Mhm.
of something that they're contributing to. Like, why are you continuing to do this? And the whole thing is just rotten. I hate it, and I think it's despicable. And as people continue to do this, like, I mean, as much as I would love to read the book, I will not buy it. You know, I just won't.
Mhm.
Anyways,
I've
Totally.
known her I've known her a long time. I know her mom.
I know.
So yeah,
I
it's
know.
really hard for
I
me
know.
to I don't disagree with what you said. I think it's you know, I don't know why you're saving this stuff for
Mhm.
It's disgusting.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
where
mean,
like capitalism and journalism should not be doing this. I mean, they do everywhere, right? On TV and in print and everywhere else, but this is the worst case scenario
Right.
where we are in 2026.
I,
It's
I
just
will I will say you should, if you want to go write books, do what Bob Woodward did and go write books, right? Like don't I mean, I have a subscription to the New York Times. I pay money for it because I expect the news to be breaking when it breaks
Mhm.
and not when
Right.
2
Yeah.
years later. So I will agree with that.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm glad that I'm not the only one who thought this whole New York Times story was completely bizarre and super fishy
Mhm.
Mhm.
and
Right.
And
asked raised more questions than it answered.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Ellie, I said this to Julie yesterday as well. We always know when stuff is getting particularly warm, uh, because the trolls and the bots like go out of control. And even just on this chat today has been super crazy.
Yeah.
And just have to wonder like where the origin is, you know, like
Yep.
I'm sure it's
Yep.
several, but
Yeah.
it's always very telling, you know, when the
I
volume
filed
gets
my first police report this week
Oh,
because of that
oh
very
my
same thing.
gosh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
So
sorry.
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it's definitely exists for sure.
Well,
Mhm.
friends, if you are getting to the point where your trolling is leading to threatening people where the police have to get involved, then
Yeah.
perhaps you should figure out what to do with your life that doesn't revolve around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I hate to say this, but with this administration.
I know.
However, Ellie, if you need help with the New Jersey State Police, you let me know.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I can't do anything with the feds, but with the New Jersey
Yeah.
State Police, potentially. Okay. Super grateful to you as always.
Yeah.
For coming
Yeah,
on.
thank you.
This is the best.
So much smarter whenever we speak to you, and
It's true.
It's true. If you are not
Yeah.
following Ellie on Substack and anywhere else where Ellie is, you should be doing that. I suspect everybody who follows us is already following Ellie, but in case you have not yet discovered the brilliance of Ellie Leonard, please go to her Substack,
Mhm.
Panic Writer, and do that.
Yep.
All right. On that note, we're going to let you get back to your kids because you were so wonderful to take time.
Yeah,
for
thank you.
It's coming home.
I was gonna release a final statement is, you know, we keep yelling about releasing the files. There's a lot of people who have files. We can see that with the New York Times. We can see that with, you know, some of these journalists or writers. If anybody has files, like release the files. Just release your files. Like whoever you are, just release them because all it does is benefit the people who need to be benefited in this trial. It shortens the span of the trial. It puts people in jail who deserve to be on jail. Like,
Yeah.
don't hold on to information for a paycheck or a paywall. Like, you know, just let that stuff go and then go write a book about it. Write a book about your experience. Talk about the things that you had, but like give those things to the people who can actually do something about it, like today.
Yep. It's the right thing to do.
It is
It's
the right thing to do. There are girls who are now women whose life has been irretrievably broken because of these people. And if that doesn't get you to put aside everything else in your life and really laser in on that, then you know, I don't know what to tell you, but you're absolutely right about that. Ellie, thank you for what you do, because what you do is so deeply important and empathetic, and always center survivors first, which is unfortunately not what a lot of people are doing, even though they could be. And thank you for your work exposing Michael Wolff, because he is the antithesis of that as well.
Scamaganset, guys.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See
All
ya.
right. Bye. Bye.